Hello, everybody, and welcome to December's webinar from the FIA Group. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Ron. Happy Hanukkah.
Hey, thank
Happy
you.
New Year to everyone. Folks, it's our last webinar of the year. We're going to save the best for last. We have an outstanding crew as always. We got our A team here. We're really excited about that. And what we're going to talk about today is the perfect vision for 2020. Basically, it's the FIA Group. That's the perfect vision.
That's it. Look out the window. That's a beautiful vision, huh?
So, folks, on the hundreds of you that are dialed in, just to let you know, we're all still, I think, recuperating from our FIA Christmas party on Friday night. It was a pretty good event. I think everyone had a good time. I was still up at 7:30 the next morning taking care of my kids. How about you, Ron?
I
You
don't.
take care of that one kid of yours?
I honestly, I don't remember. I don't remember whether it was a good time or not, which I guess is a good sign.
Folks, I asked Ron to go up and do a speech. It was horrible. I was not expecting that speech from Ron. I was thinking it would be something better. Did you guys think?
It was a little poetic, you know?
It wasn't your finest. You probably had a couple drinks.
Well, a couple. I do think it's funny that the people who cheered loudest were your family. The company can't care less, but your family.
My family loves you, Ron.
I'm making money for the company, for all the employees, and it's your family.
My family definitely, cherishes you more than most of our employees.
Ah, that's beautiful.
So, folks, and we also announced a big announcement at the Christmas party on Friday night. It looks like that's worked out well. So, how it works out, we'll see, but we're going to talk about it today.
That's right.
And what is our overview today? We're going to talk about the future is now. We're going to do, as always, the ICE meltdown and frequently asked questions from PGC, Brady's political update. Feel free to snooze and leave the webinar during that time. Prescription drug pricing, paid family leave. What fizzled out in 2019? There's always something there, right? And then prepare for 2020 incentives and sticks, HRA Integration, last but not least, SPD and SBC updates. So who are today's speakers? You see that fine-looking character right there on the left? That's me. Next to me is Ron Epak. Well, you look really handsome in that photo. Have I ever told you that?
Well,
you really good.
Seriously, I can never hear that too often.
That tie has to go, but otherwise, it's not bad. A layer brush. And then Jen with way too much makeup on from that photo right there. But that's okay. And next to Jen, we have the infamous Brady Bizzarro. Brady looks, his posture's perfect in this photo, isn't it?
Looking like a lawyer, I think.
In addition, we have a special guest speaker.
We do?
Yes, we do, Ron.
Wow.
And his name includes the name Brady.
Oh, double down.
We have double Brady duty today. We're really excited about that. But just like Brady did in the past, this Brady will get one slide. Remember those days, Brady?
I do, yeah.
It's like Ron now. But back in the day, you used to get one slide.
Yep.
You know Chris Aguiar used to join us? And he was just really bad at this, so we got rid of him.
He milked the one slide for 30 minutes.
That's what he did. It took a long time on his one slide. So, folks, as always, what motivates us? We care about what? The problem being healthcare costs too much. What is our purpose? To make health benefits more affordable. Why? Because every hardworking American deserves access to high quality and affordable health care. Folks, I think too often the word quality is not involved in the situation. If you look at most reference-based pricing out there, everyone's talking about low cost, but no one's looking at the infection rate. No one's looking at the readmission rate. One thing that we need to do, I actually have a family friend who last week or 2 weeks ago had a procedure. When we looked up the surgeon online using our quality metrics, this doctor was in the top 40 percentile for infections in his specialty. Well, guess what happened, Ron?
I'm going to say that there was an infection.
Yes, there was.
Wow, the data doesn't lie.
There was an infection. The data does not lie. I warned my friend not to use this surgeon, but he said he is recommended by one of the best. Well, now he has an infection, readmitted to the hospital, and good luck to him.
So I could use a little time in a bed and take a break.
That is true.
Take some time off.
Folks, we need some money. It's embarrassing. We're not getting enough money into the RIP medical debt, the National 501c3. This organization has been all over the news. It's been in the media, Fox News, CNN, all over the place. Ron gave a lot of money. I gave some money. We need more money. Hopefully the Bradys donate some money today. That'd be great. I'm requesting they both do, as well as to the hundreds of you dialed in today. Please, whatever you can give would be great. We will make sure we send a link to this after today's website. It is the holiday season. It is the season of giving. $90,000 raised would eliminate every dollar of hospital and billing debt faced in Massachusetts by all those people having hard luck times right now, Rod. So what do you think of that?
That's amazing. And if you think about it, I mean, again, if you're not really visualizing it, don't think necessarily of the providers and the debt collectors or whomever. Think about ultimately who this impacts, and that is the people who bear the debt.
Speaking of impact, I want to thank all of our clients. I am not forgetful of the fact that 20 years ago now, we didn't have any clients. And we are celebrating our 20th anniversary in 2020. So we're really excited about that. But as you all know, for the hundreds of you that are our clients and the ones that are listening now, you should be getting a card from us talking about, instead of us sending you, because I have a chocolate, thank you for all the chocolates, but everyone in our office is getting heavier every day this week.
We have a self-funded plan.
I literally got 8 boxes of chocolates on my desk today.
Which means your kids
That means I passed out. It means I passed out 6 boxes and I've already eaten 2 of them.
There you go.
So why do I bring this up? We are on Friday giving out 750 gifts to the Brockton, not called Brockton Boys and Girls Club anymore. Sorry, it's the Boys and Girls Club of Metro South. We are giving out 750 gifts. These are actual gifts that these kids in Brockton asked via letters to Santa what they wanted for Christmas. Our team, our staff went out and purchased the exact gifts. This money that we utilize, is money that we have budgeted to give gifts to you. So you all are the reasons why these children are getting gifts this Christmas from Santa, and I will personally be delivering them on Friday, dressed up in my Santa outfit, as I do every year. It's the greatest day of my year. So I want to thank all of you that are listening for making that happen on behalf of us today. All right, feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. I'm sure we'll have pictures of me as Santa on LinkedIn later on this month. There are 4,128 followers on LinkedIn. It used to be that Matt was afraid to tell me how many followers we had because it was so little. But now
he's waving it around.
He's waving it around in my face. It's pretty amazing. So, also feel free to download our podcast, listen on Apple Podcasts or on Google Podcasts. We appreciate that. And now we're going to turn it over to Matt, who's going to give you guys some survey questions, which we want to talk about right now. The first survey question being, which topic, right, would you like for us to discuss on our next podcast that we will hopefully do this week?
Wow, interactive.
The biggest takeaways from 2019, a political update and predictions that we all know how they'll go with Brady, preparing your plan document for 2020, the future of FMLA, and prescription drug coverage and addiction treatment. Which one of these do you want to be our next podcast? And we will do it this week. We were hoping not to have Brady on the podcast, but it looks like it's doing pretty well.
There's a lot going on.
Wait a second. RX drugs and plan doc coverage. I'm going to wait till we get about 50%, and we'll know what to do. And it is prescription drug coverage. So, Jen, we'll have you on the podcast later on this week to do it. Sounds perfect.
We're going to talk drugs.
All right.
Next one, very important question. You would think by now we'd have the right answer. Which is a form of reference-based pricing? Payment at 150% of Medicare, payment at the amount other providers charge, payment at 150% of the provider's costs, or all of the above. Let's see how many smart people we have today. And we're not looking that smart right now. I'm joking, folks. We're almost there. And, folks, we have proven that our audience is not that smart. Only 42% got it right. All of the above. Folks, reference-based pricing is just a reference to something. We could have said payment at 150% of the Walmart price. We could have said it's a reference-based pricing. It's pricing based on a reference point. It doesn't say what the reference point is, hence why you have a plan document. Okay, next. Are health plans permitted to engage in cross-patient offsetting to recoup overpayments on claims paid incorrectly or too much, whatever? We just answered this question for a client, and that's why we want to bring this up. 1, yes, as long as it's the same provider. Yes, as long as the plan document allows it. No, since the patient would be unreasonably punished. No, since it's not specifically written in the ACA. Let's see what we get here. Let's see how well we do. Oh, man. We have a lot of education here. So 2020, I think what we have to do is we failed, folks. We failed our audience. We're not doing that great of a job because incorrectly they think it's okay as long as the plan document allows it. The plan document has a lot of power. But if I make an overpayment for Jen, right, I cannot recoup that overpayment from Steve or from Brady because I'd be basically punishing Brady.
Brady's going to get balanced bills.
Correct. Plans always want to do it, withhold benefits due to another unrelated patient. However, you cannot punish one patient and, basically that provider. Right. You can do it on the same patient, no problem.
Right.
But not a different patient.
Although hypothetically, before you try that, I suppose you could reach out to the provider and rather than demand the overpayment, get him to agree to offset and waive the balance on Brady, but you would need someone who's really good at negotiating with providers to do that.
Folks, here's what I can tell you. I will be CEO at the fee group for another year at least. Why? Because I invented Patient Defender. And thousands and tens of thousands of lives have been added on. Ron has done an amazing job in the legal end. That's why he has a job for 2020.
Oh, wow.
Feel free to contact us if you're interested. If you want to protect your patients against balance billing, Patient Defender is the way to go, as well as for yourself, get PACE certified. There have been hundreds of people already certified. 75% of PACE certified TPAs are reporting the tools provided have already increased their PACE plan adoption rate, meaning more revenue for the TPA, more employees being protected, and overall, it's good for the entire industry. What does this PACE coverage cover? PACE certification cover? Chapter 1 talks about how insurance works. Chapter 2 talks about PACE certification overall. And Chapter 3 gets into the details and the nitty-gritty of PACE. I'd love to know if our Kevin Brady here has actually been PACE certified.
I am not PACE certified.
Not PACE certified, not the correct answer.
But I was part of the test group.
I still think, folks, the guy with one slide has not been PACE certified yet. Maybe we should remove that slide. Please text me if you think we should get rid of him off this webinar, or if we should expect him to be PACE certified by this time next month. Special shout out to a guy with the same first name as me, Adam Zebian of People's United Insurance Agency. Adam told us he's a baseball fanatic, playing baseball since he was 4. His grandfather played for the Red Sox. Ron and I do not care. He played with Ted Williams, taught you the game. I think it's great. He's still playing a Tri-County League. So great. Adam plays in an over 40s men's league, it seems, which is fair. Oh, maybe it's a co-ed team. Who knows? But that's great. We don't know what team he roots for, though, Ron. I'm assuming it's the Red Sox.
I'm gonna assume he's loyal to his family. You know what I think is funny, though? You know what I do think is funny? That Adam, I see that you sent in a comment saying that Adam's Walmart joke was brilliant before you even knew you were going to get a shout out. I just want you to know we didn't create this slide as a result of your commentary.
Very impressive. Very impressive. Folks, what you're going to notice a lot of is this. Next year, in 2020, you're going to notice this logo everywhere. You picked it. You folks on the webinar picked this logo amongst 10 different logos that our brilliant marketing team led by Matt Paynton came up with. 2020 ushers in the 20th year of the fee group's existence. We're going to do a lot of cool stuff celebrating our 20 years of empowering plans. Our 20th anniversary gala celebration will be held in Cleveland, as everyone knows how much I love my beloved Indians, so we're really excited about that. But the biggest news, folks, you are not going to believe this. Friday night at the FIA Christmas party, in my drunken stupor, actually I'm joking, I did not start drinking, as you all know, until after I finished my speech. That's why I wanted that speech to happen as early as possible. We told the big announcements. I asked every employee who's been on FIA's health plan to stand up. Every employee at FIA who's been on our plan for 5 years will have free health insurance at FIA next year. All of them. And that's a lot of people. So people say, oh, like will they be deductible? No, there is no deductible. There is no contribution at all from the employee. Oh, so that means that coverage is just for that employee? No, it's for their entire family. So Jen, you've been on the plan for 5 years?
I have.
So Jen will be covered for herself,
All right.
her soon-to-be ex-spouse, and their children will be covered 100% by the fee group's health plan. As long as our healthcare costs are contained, the rewards will flow. And Ron wrote, say what? Here's how we do it. The reason we're able to do this, folks, is because our employees are not just patients. They are consumers of healthcare. They do everything possible to keep our costs low and quality high, and that's why it's free. Now, the offer is contingent upon what? You got to make sure you actually attend mandatory open enrollment meetings. They're not just open. We don't talk about how to enroll. We don't just talk about how the plan works. We don't just talk about what's covered and what's not covered. We talk about these are the top cost drivers. These are the trends. These are our cost containment programs. These are the initiatives. Here are the tools, online tools, the apps. Here's everything you can do. If you want to have free healthcare at FIA, here's everything you can do to help us contain plan costs. Folks, we'll know in 1 year if this worked or not. We feel extremely confident about it because for the 4th year in a row, our average per employee costs have gone down. And that's opposite of all trend. So we're really excited about this going forward. And with that, I'm finally going to stop talking and turn it over to Jen McCormick to talk about our most frequently asked questions. Take it away, Jen, and watch the numbers spike. There they go.
All right, so that's really exciting news. There are less than 10 companies in the country that do that, so we're really excited about it. So you might be asking, how do I get on FIA's plan? Well, the problem is, if you are not an employee, you cannot get on our plan. Just kidding.
But you can marry Brady. I mean,
right. That's true. So the first FAQ to talk about today is whether or not you can allow certain non-employees, owners, shareholders, board members onto your plan, and whether there might be particular compliance concerns with that. The answer is there are. The first issue that could arise is some discrimination issues based on the 105H rules and looking to see if maybe by having this sort of arrangement, particularly if these people are non-employees, that you are creating some sort of non-favorable tax consequences for those HCIs. The second thing that we always talk about is by creating an opportunity to enroll or allow people who are not employees that you are accidentally creating a MIWA. And by having a MIWA, there are certain state rules and regulations, fundings, and reserve requirements that are going to have to be met. So by allowing those individuals to enroll in the plan, you are accidentally creating some potential problems, state law problems that would need to be addressed and resolved. Last, it could create accidentally a common law employer or employee relationship which otherwise hadn't been intended for. So before you are looking to add individuals to the plan that are not employees or not otherwise eligible as dependents, please ask us and we can offer you some suggestions, commentary on the proper way that you could do that without accidentally running into tax, MIWA, state law, or other employment-related issues. All right, question number 2. Does opting into Washington's new Balanced Billing Protection Act subject our ERISA plan to state law generally? We want the protections for our participants, but don't want to open Pandora's box. Yikes. So this is potentially something we're going to start to see as these states are starting to offer these new balanced billing type protection acts. These acts are something that, while now they are newer, we're not actually seeing what the implications have been for our self-funded plans. There are some plans that actually might want to take advantage of this new regulation, maybe in Washington or maybe in other states. And the impact that this specific will have on ERISA plans, guess what? This is a case of first impression. We don't necessarily know, but it is our opinion that by electing to voluntarily opt into this particular program, if you are a self-funded plan, it is not, at least at this point, based on the regulations that we have read, our interpretation that it is otherwise going to subject that ERISA plan in that state to all the other regulations and laws that a Washington state law plan would be subject to. So that's exciting. We'll have to wait and see if there's other guidance that surrounds what this particular issue is. But as of right now, it seems like you can opt in specific to this Balanced Bill Protection Act.
All right, folks. First time ever, Mr. Kevin Brady is going to talk. Listen, we expect him not to do a good job. No one's thinking he's going to actually kick some butt on this. Does anybody raise your hand if you think he's going to do a good job? I got
50-50.
It's a 4-3 vote.
Everyone in the room raised their hand.
Who let you talk?
Oh,
You don't talk until I say it. You talk. But anyways, folks, Mr. Brady wrote an email to me talking about how he wants to get more involved in podcasts and public speaking, and I said, all right, well, guess what? Here's your chance. So, for the first time in what we hope is a repeat opportunity going forward, Mr. Attorney, our attorney, right? You're an attorney here, right? Good. Our attorney, Mr. Kevin Brady, take it away.
All right, thank you, Adam. For this month's ICE Meltdown, I thought I'd share one of the more interesting and nuanced responses that we worked on over at the ICE team. Basically, a client asked us to review a claim and determine whether the claim was rightfully denied. The question essentially became, does a self-funded ERISA plan have to pay an in-network claim if the timely filing window has passed? All right, so here are the brief facts. A plan participant of a self-funded plan incurred claims at an in-network provider. For whatever reason, the participant provided other health insurance coverage at the time of the service. As a result, the provider did not bill the plan until well after the timely filing period had passed. The plan, rightfully so, denied the claim based on timely filing, and despite this denial, the network provider insisted on payment under both the network agreement and state law. So what did the ICE team do? We reviewed the claims, appeals letters, SBD, network agreement, and state law to determine whether the denial was appropriate. We determined that the plan language supported the denial, the network agreement supported the denial, and even determined that state law, even though it would not have been relevant given a risk of preemption, also supported the denial. Now this is where it gets interesting. After the plan upheld the denial, the network threatened to remove both the groups and the TPA's access to the entire network. So what did? We stepped back in and did a thorough review of all the rights and remedies available under the network agreement and helped the TPA prepare in the event that the network actually attempted to revoke their access. At the end of the day, we helped to protect the plan from paying a claim that would not have been reimbursed by stop loss. We helped protect the plan administrator from breaching their fiduciary duty, and we helped the TPA. We helped protect the TPA from the aggressive and unreasonable threats by the network provider. Now, I have paid certification to do, so I'm going to turn it over to Brady.
Hold on. It's Adam.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, couple things, folks, and I hope you all agree. It was obvious you were reading.
Oh, well, okay, yeah.
Okay.
I felt like it was
I've never done one.
It sounded like the impeachment hearings. It's like, that is when something
You cannot just read. If you notice something, I have no notes. You got to just talk from the heart. That's one. Two, at the end of the day, it's a very simple question, right? If I'm someone listening in right now, my question is, all right, well, from a business standpoint, yeah, the plan had the right not to pay. The TPA has a right to stand by its plan. But what's going to happen, guys, with this network? Are they going to they still have the right to get rid of them, don't they? You don't have to give network access. If you're the network and you're free to contract with anyone, can't the network still say, yeah, great, don't pay the claim, but we're not allowing you?
Blacklist
It could be a network contract that says, we can revoke access or something. Yeah.
Right. So even though the plan has a right, at the end of the day, they have to make a business decision as to whether or not they want to stick with this network or not.
Right. Sure. Well, that issue comes up all the time. Whenever there's an inconsistency between the network contract and the plan document, if they can't coexist, you're basically going to have to make a decision every time.
So last thing I'll bring up before we turn it over to Brady on his impeachment scandal talk this week, which I hope we don't talk about too much. I can tell you this, Kevin, we lost one listener during your talk. So one person actually left us.
I think it's somebody who has the same issue. They panicked and they're emailing him right now.
Letting everyone know. So we got to see if we bring him back. But luckily it's not Ron effect. Ron would have lost to 10 people. Anyways, turn it over to Brady. Let's see how the impeachment talk goes.
So I thought that was a great photo to use there from this week. But we're not going to talk about...
Are you admiring your graphics?
I was. I had a little self-aggrandizement. We're not going to talk about the actual impeachment scandal, but because we're here to talk about self-funding and the impact on healthcare, we're going to talk about what impeachment has done to the healthcare agenda. All year long, I've been following mostly all the developments on Capitol Hill. What's happening with surprise billing legislation? What are we doing with drug importation? And you know what? We started the year out pretty disruptive. We had a government shutdown that was interfering with everything. Now we're closing the year out with something even worse: impeachment. Impeachment has really just taken all the oxygen out of the congressional chambers, if you will, and then all these bills that I was so excited about, and so was everyone else in the industry, about bipartisan drug pricing bills, looking at the cost of insulin, ending surprise balanced billing. All those things seem so great, and then all of a sudden this inquiry opened, and really no one wants to deal with anyone. So it's been pretty bad. It's caused a lot of setbacks, and just a brief timeline of how this is going to play out. Tomorrow, the House will vote on impeachment. They'll kick it over to the Senate, and we expect a trial in the Senate to start early January, which means that all these bills that are lingering in Congress, including a budget bill, are really threatened. So any legislation that we had hoped and SIA had hoped would get passed this year is not getting passed. And things early into next year, also unclear what may happen, because now you've got some really big, bitter partisan divides going on, and it's really interfering with everything. However, we did have some action. I think it's worth noting a few of these things. There was a groundbreaking drug pricing bill that passed the House. I believe it was last week or maybe the week before that, and it was titled the Elijah E. Cummings Lower Drug Costs Now Act, after the late congressman who was very, very much engaged with the White House in developing a bill for drug pricing legislation. So some of the things in this bill that are very important that I think will stick around next year as the Congress hopefully takes up another version of this bill, right? Drug negotiations. So empowering Health and Human Services to negotiate drug prices with manufacturers directly. We've been talking about this ad nauseum on the campaign trail in Congress. This made its way in the House bill that passed, and it affects 250 of the most expensive drugs, including insulin. So that would probably cover every single drug that every one of you has a problem with, including Zolgensma and all those other hard-to-pronounce drugs. That would be a big deal. Right, fraction for it. Also, out-of-pocket cap. They're working mostly here with Medicare Part D enrollees because there's seniors that are really bearing the brunt of these drug costs. The thing that's important, though, and you might ask, well, why do we care about Medicare Part D enrollees when we're talking about self-funded plans and private insurance? Well, the answer is because Medicare covers pretty much every drug as it is. And so I think any kind of cost containment initiative that Congress passes or tries to get passed that would help Medicare beneficiaries can become and will become probably a blueprint that can be applied to the private market. So that's why we think it's important to discuss. A few things, too. They added some extra benefits for Medicare beneficiaries. That's good. And they have this new sort of carrot and stick approach they're taking with drug manufacturers, where if you as a manufacturer raise the price of your drug by more than inflation, you've got to pay a rebate to the federal government. I think you'll see that incentive structure repackaged in other forms of bills that we'll see going forward. What else has happened despite the impeachment inquiry? Well, the White House has completed its review of the long-awaited drug importation rule, which we've been talked about for months and months and months. We had earlier in the year this directive issued about CanRx and, the sort of signals that HHS and the DOL might crack down on drug importation. That never happened. What's happened since is the administration is actually going to issue a proposal which will allow for importation in two different ways. Recall there were two ways in this proposal. The first one is that states would be allowed to import drugs directly from Canada. And actually what's happened since is Canada, the government of Canada, has actually pushed back against this in collusion, I would say, with some of the drug manufacturers, saying that they're too small of a country to rely on for this. But in any case, you've already seen some states, including Florida, Colorado, Vermont, and Maine, that are drafting proposals that would allow them to import drugs from Canada. The other way that drug importation is likely to happen is that the drug makers themselves could import their own products into this country and sell them under different drug codes. The bottom line is in January, a few weeks from now, we expect HHS to release a blueprint for how the administration will allow drug importation legally. When that happens, we'll be sure to report on it because it's going to be a big deal for self-funded plans and municipalities especially that want to take advantage of the ability to import drugs from Canada where the price of a drug is something like a third of what it is here. I'm going to save the issue of paid family leave for Jen because she's got a lot to talk about the big bill that was passed or that will be signed in the Senate this week that will expand access for millions of federal workers. But finally, what I'll say on the political update is we have another debate. The last debate of 2019 is this Thursday in Los Angeles. It will go forward. We've got 7 candidates, so expect to see a lot more discussed on healthcare in depth, and we'll be focusing on what was discussed, Medicare for all. I know some of the other candidates have released new plans for drug importation, including Andrew Yang and others. So I'll be watching that, and I know you guys will be too, Thursday, 9 p.m., or it might be 8 p.m., but make sure you watch that. Okay, that's the political update.
Is that time of Thursday Night Football? That could be trouble. It's not going to happen.
It might be.
Brady will watch, but that's pretty much it.
A few more things that we think is worth saying on prescription drugs, because it really has been probably the most talked about issue of 2019, I would say, just ahead probably of surprise billing and balance billing legislation. So where were we in 2019? How did we get to where we're at? What can we say that we accomplished? Remember that earlier in the year, we covered extensively these hearings on Capitol Hill with PBMs, with drug manufacturers. They were hauled in front of Congress and really questioned about, the tactics they're using. Why are their drugs so expensive? What will Congress do to act? I feel like some progress was made there, particularly in the Senate, when you had some bipartisanship and agreement on how that something had to get done. So there were a lot of good signs there. You had the blueprint that the administration issued back in May, the American Patients First Act. And the administration had since done some things that were rolled back by the courts, including requiring manufacturers to list the price of their drug in television ads. Remember that, everyone? Now, you put on the TV, all you see is Tom Steyer ads, but you used to be able to see ads for the cost of drugs to be revealed, and that was blocked in court. So that was a setback, I would say, for both parties and for us as an industry. But what was accomplished was they did repeal the physician gag rule. That was a good thing. So doctors can now tell patients about generic alternatives if they're cheaper and not face a lawsuit. That's a good thing. We did get some updated agency guidance on the manufacturer assistance exclusion. Remember, we talked about how it's our position at FIA that you must count the value of patient coupon copay cards toward the patient's out-of-pocket maximum. But since then, the agencies have noted that because a discrepancy exists in the regulations, they're not going to enforce this regulation, and they're going to, for now, allow plans to not count those amounts toward the max out of pocket. We expect early this 2020 more guidance on what's to be done with that particular issue. And briefly, we expect in 2020 a lot more discussion about pharmacogenomics and alternative models for controlling the cost of drugs. One last thing I want to mention here is, while I talked about the House bill that did pass the House, note that it was declared dead on arrival by the Senate. Instead, the Senate has its own bill on drug pricing, and from what I'm reading, this is likely, or certainly it may, become law in 2020 because it's not as an aggressive approach to tackling the cost containment issues of drug pricing. It was a bill introduced by two very important senators. It has some of the same components of the House bill, but in some, what it does is it creates incentives for these payers to manage costs by allowing the government to negotiate the cost of certain drugs. Again, here it is again popping up in another bill. Very, very important. It also has one last point here on manufacturers must exclude the value of these patient assistance coupons when they calculate the average sales price. This is an interesting little tidbit that I thought was worth noting, because the average sale price, if you include the coupon amount, gets boosted way up, and that's the amount that PBM rebates are based on, and on and on and on. So I think what you're seeing are these sort of small but important cost containment techniques that are appearing in these bills.
What's important, Brady, is the fact that we were told that there is no more Thursday night football.
That's good, yes.
You can all act
on Saturday. Watch the debate Thursday. I expect this bill will probably be discussed in the debate, but just know that once we get through the impeachment trial, which could take weeks, in February, I think this bill in particular is the best hope we have for legislation on drug pricing. I'm watching it carefully, so should you. You should also watch carefully the discussion Jen's about to have with you about paid federal family leave.
Great transition there, Brady.
No Ron yet. All right. All right. Okay.
I'm the caboose of this webinar.
So I'm sure if, like me, you follow blogs, non-blogs, attorney blogs, this has been something that you have been hearing a lot about. This is an important issue. So there has not been a bill or proposal like this since the initiation of FMLA back in 1993, when I wasn't even born yet, obviously. So this is going to have, yeah, 93. I wasn't born yet.
Okay.
Obviously.
All right.
So this is going to be a program that is going to have a huge impact. We're going to talk about it on a state basis, but this would be the first time on a federal benefit or a federal level where we're going to see such a huge expansion of the opportunity for federal employees to now be able to take paid leave. This is going to extend to 2.1 million Americans. Right now, there's opportunity for these individuals to take a leave, but it would only be unpaid. So this is going to allow them to not only offer this type of coverage for 12 weeks for the birth, the adoption, or the fostering of a particular child. Whether or not this is going to have an impact for other states is yet to be seen, since we only know a few of those states have decided to adopt this. But a lot of the discussion surrounding why this would be an important benefit is that people are starting to realize that they want to be an attractive employer. As a federal government, it is one of the largest employers in the country.
The largest.
Well, thank you, Brady. Get a caveat there. So as the largest, like the Ohio State University, employer in the country, this is going to have a large effect for maybe drawing other employees, other candidates that didn't possibly exist. So states are starting to take a notice. Let's take a look at the state breakdown right now. This is a nice chart that would be something that would be relevant for employers who are offering plans right now in this in one of these 8 states or in DC for what and how they might compare to those states. So this is the paid leave. You can notice that Massachusetts is currently up there, and our leave is set to actually benefit-wise take effect in another year, starting in 2021. But you can see that there are some conditions based on whether it's parental leave, whether you're caring for a sick family member, or just for general medical leave on its own. There's a lot of variation here between the states, but what you can see is that this is becoming pretty popular. Particularly in this past couple of years, a lot of states are jumping on and starting to offer this as a benefit. So as you are having discussions, and maybe you're looking at it now since we're getting close towards the end of or the beginning of our January re-enrollment or enrollment period, this is maybe a benefit that you should be considering for your particular plans and how it is that you should actually be getting prepared. So first, when it comes to those particular states, whether you are in one of those or whether or not you have an employer who wants to stay competitive with the benefits that would be available within those particular states, how are they being administered now? Are there certain changes and modifications that you might need to make as a result of that? Are there funds in Massachusetts? There's a particular committee that is dedicated to ensuring that the deductions are properly made and funded. So maybe you need to look at the contributions rates. Maybe you need to communicate this to your particular employees about how this is going to have an impact. Maybe there are flyers that need to be posted around the office, or communications that you need to be made available. The written material, maybe your policy needs to be modified or updated. Also, is there a particular modification to your plan that you need to do to allow for the continuation of coverage during this? If you're making a change to your continuation of coverage, do you need to notify other individuals, maybe like the stop loss carrier, about this modification that you're making to as a result of the change for the state leave, or maybe is the benefit that you just want to offer to stay competitive? So, and is this federal leave, is this going to apply, and how is this going to overlay with any private employers? What if you have a dependent on the plan that might be eligible for this federal paid leave? There are a lot of nuances there to consider, as maybe there's the coordination not only of benefits, but the coordination of how a leave might work. And last but not least, I'll leave you with this before turning it over finally to Ron, is maybe this is an opportunity for a plan who already is self-funded for medical coverage to self-fund for short-term disability. Maybe that is something they hadn't investigated before due to cost. Maybe this is something that they had thought would maybe not necessarily be a requirement for them. But now, particularly since the largest employer in the country is offering a paid family leave, maybe self-funding a short-term disability plan to condition and care for those employees as a benefit is something that employers should start to consider so they can stay competitive. Before I turn it over to you, Ron, let me talk about the wellness rules really quickly.
You almost forgot them again, Jen.
I know. You know what? And you know why I forgot about them? Everybody else did too.
Right.
Guys, we're 40 minutes in, and Ron still has not talked. Hey,
What?
folks,
What? I was sleeping.
it is
Sorry.
very clear. Looks like Ron might not be around for 2020's webinars, I think. Brady, what are you doing? You're the one putting these slides together. Ron, I apologize, but I mean,
No apology.
we got to change this up.
All right, talk about things that have fizzled. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Oh.
All right, so let's go through a quick timeline of what happened with the wellness rules. 2016, there were some regulations that were issued by the EEOC making some modifications to what employers should do to comply with ADA and GINA and setting these maximum incentives in place. In 2017, the provisions were invalidated. Yikes. In 2019, we were expecting to have a reversal or a modification or some sort of guidance about what to expect. Well, that didn't happen. So now we're at the point where we have these rules that were there, that were in place, and they were invalidated, and they told us there would be some new rules or regulations to tell us what to do. But now we're just sitting in uncertainty. We don't know what to do. We don't know what to expect, other than just sit tight with what we have and hope for the best, maybe cross our fingers and toes that maybe in 2020 we'll get some more guidance on what to do with these wellness rules. And now, Ron, I'll turn it over to you.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
All right. There's nothing else you want to talk about. Brady, there's no more acronyms you want to throw out there?
Yeah.
I generally think the federal government's going to run out of acronyms by the year 2022. But anyway, that's just my prediction. Speaking of predictions, what did we predict were going to be hot topics in 2019 that I believe we've started to see sort of the talk fizzle out for 2020? Now, take note before I get into this, it does not mean that these are not relevant topics. It does not mean that these are things that are going to continue to be issues that we need to address. It does not mean that they, in and of themselves, are going to lose popularity. Please do not misunderstand. When we say it means fizzling, what we mean is there is less controversy surrounding these topics. We're getting way fewer questions about these topics. And what's interesting is the things about which we're getting a lot more topics, which will be the next slide, actually correspond perfectly. So let's go ahead and quickly address these. International RX importation. You know, Andrew Silverio, an attorney in our office, was spending night and day answering questions about this. And then all of a sudden, he found himself with a lot of free time. Why is that? Well, you might recall that the controversy sort of culminated in the letter that, and also, I don't want to call it a lawsuit, but let's say proceedings against a popular service provider in this field. And everybody was basically saying, that's it, it's illegal, we're done. And you started to see sort of two camps form. Those who are willing to do it despite the fact there was some controversy, and those who said, you know what, we're going to take a wait-and-see approach. Well, it hasn't really changed since then. And so things have settled down. The people who are doing it are doing it. The people who refuse to do so are not. And until I think we actually see another dramatic pushback, either from the government or somebody else, you're not going to hear a lot of noise about it. Another thing that is very similar or related is this concept of foreign medical tourism. There was a point in time earlier in the year where it didn't matter where you went or who you were talking to. Somebody was talking about getting a knee replacement in Costa Rica or getting some other inpatient procedure in South America and Canada and flying out to Europe for this replacement or that surgery. And then all of a sudden, quiet. And I think one of the major reasons that you didn't really see all of this noise culminate into anything more than just that is because they had a hard time getting plan participants to get excited. The adoption rate just wasn't there.
Also, the incentive opportunity, I don't think, was there, Ron. At the end of the day, telling someone you're going to waive a copay may not be a good enough reason, right? Cash is king.
I think people mistakenly believed the fact that you were going to stay at a hospital that was similar to a resort in an exotic location was a reward in and of itself. But people saw through that and said, you know what? When I was on my honeymoon, I wasn't in a hospital bed with IVs plugged into me. It's not exactly the same.
And there's always that perception that America is the best at everything. There's no way there can be a good hospital somewhere else.
I think regardless, absolutely. The fear of malpractice, of complications, being far from home. I don't think enough was done from a PR perspective to get past that. And so it quieted down. Doesn't mean people aren't doing it.
People are doing it, but I'm still surprised how many people don't opt for it.
There you go. Another thing that there was a lot of talk, and now all of a sudden it's being replaced, and we'll talk about by what on the next slide, is sort of pure reference-based pricing. And particularly sort of non-traditional reference-based pricing, things like using Medicare as a basis for payment, as your payment methodology. When I call pure RBP, what I'm talking about is a third-party administrator or a claims processor applying Medicare-like rates, paying the bill, and that's the end of it, just repricing on its own. For a while, there were a number of players in the industry that thought they could just do claims repricing and everything else would come out in the wash. And what we've discovered over time is it doesn't really work that way. And you need to have a specialist, somebody who has something in place, a process or procedure to deal with the pushback down the line. So pure RBP, not really something we're seeing a lot of anymore. Now it's RBP with the secret sauce, which we'll talk about in a bit. High deductible plans, mech plans, skinny plans, basically this attitude that, you know what, I can't solve the issue, I can't solve the healthcare price crisis, so what I'm going to do as a sophisticated industry insider is I'm going to take the problem and shift it to the patient in the form of monetary penalties and let them figure it out. Just the way I say that, you should know that that's probably not going to work out, because if you can't resolve an issue with a provider, if you can't figure out what to do with price transparency, how is Joe Lunchbox going to do it? He's not. So ultimately, you started to see, I think, some fading or fizzling in this area. Another problem or reason why I think it's not as popular as it was at the start of the year is all of the racket, the noise surrounding Medicare for all. Now, I don't care whether you think Medicare for all is likely to actually happen or not, either in the immediate future or distant future. The fact of the matter is people are talking about it. And they're talking about it because they're not happy. And what are they not happy with? They're not happy with their health benefit plans. And the advocates for Medicare for all are doing what? They're taking these high deductible plans, these plans that put a huge out-of-pocket burden on the employee, on the plan member, on the patient, and they're waving it around as their banner. And they're saying, look what you're doing. You're bankrupting America. So regardless of what your intent was, I believe that these ideas or plan methodologies, unfortunately, resulted in somebody else taking advantage of the fact that you were putting financial burden back on the patient in order to advance their own political agenda.
A quick anecdote, Ron. I saw a tweet from President Obama, who often around this time tweets out to encourage enrollment in the exchanges, and someone replied to him and said, but how much will the deductible be on this plan? And then there was no answer from that. So I think you're absolutely right. That's what those people who are for Medicare for all, they're highlighting those high deductible plans as to make their argument for them.
Right. And here's another thing, and then I want to jump into what we actually see a lot more noise. But, you know, another thing that when people are talking, just in general, they talk about the cost of healthcare, the cost of healthcare. If you're an industry insider like me, I'm sure you get very upset when people talk about the cost of healthcare, but the truth is they're talking about the cost of health insurance or the cost of their health benefits. And what are they talking about? They're talking about their premium or contributions, their deductibles, their copays, their coinsurance, the patient out of pocket. That's what they're talking about. And when you take a deductible that was $100 or $500 last year and you make it $3,000 this year, guess what? People are going to say the cost of health care is rising, when in fact it was the cost of their plan. So when you hear somebody saying the time for Medicare for all is now because of the rising cost of health care, maybe that high deductible plan had something to do with it. So where do we see some actual noise towards the end of the year? We're starting to see more questions. Well, you'll notice that these kind of correspond or correlate with the fizzling topics. In particular, foreign administration of specialty drugs. You know that people were bumping up against these barriers, these hurdles, these issues when it came to bringing drugs from outside the country into the United States. So what did they do? They said, you know what? It's still cheaper to take a person, fly them to the other country, have the drug administered there, and then fly them home. Now, unlike foreign medical tourism for inpatient, where the person is going to be undergoing potentially a dangerous procedure, they're going to be in a hospital bed in this other country for days or weeks, this is a quick in and out, give me the injection and send me home. Now, again, maybe in the past people didn't like being on airplanes, but frankly, it's the only time I have to actually watch a movie or catch up on my emails, so that's a benefit in and of itself. But already you're starting to see this as a potential idea that's starting to flourish. This is particularly something that's getting a lot of talk in the area of specialty drugs and actually dialysis as well. So we're going to keep an eye on that, and we'll keep you posted. But that's something we're starting to see pick up. Corresponding with foreign medical tourism, domestic medical tourism. And Adam mentioned this. You know, I'm assuming he looked at the slides ahead of time. Otherwise, it's just serendipity. But when he talked about the fact that medical tourism in and of itself is a great idea, but people have this innate fear of leaving the country, somebody had this bright idea. Well, then why don't we direct contract with centers of excellence within the United States, get them to offer better care for less cost, and just fly somebody to Cleveland? Not a bad idea, and they could pick up a game, right? So that's what we're starting to see as the foreign medical tourism is starting to sort of settle down, this idea of domestic tourism and contracting and how it, you know, either pushes up against your PPO or not, and how you can successfully put this in your plan document. That's an area we see picking up. Likewise, RBP Plus. When I say plus, plus is the program that underlies the reference-based pricing. It's the fact that there's patient advocacy. It's that there's something to deal with balanced billing. There's legal representation for the patients. There's contracting efforts. There's narrow networks, right? All of the reference-based pricing plans that we see succeeding today that are getting a lot more play in the media and in the industry are the plans that, yes, they do the reference-based pricing, repricing, but there's something more to it. And regardless of what that more to it is, whether it's this aggressive advocacy or negotiating with providers or something in between, focus on quality, yes, identifying centers of excellence, right. Steerage of patients to the places where you have direct contracts. Just repricing at Medicare and being done with it ain't going to fly anymore, and that's where we're seeing more.
Or narrowing a PPO network or narrowing a network that way, and then having reference-based pricing for out-of-network. We're seeing that, obviously.
We witness, it's almost like these two sides of the spectrum are coming together in the middle. You have the ones who had no network that are executing direct contracts and forming a narrow network, and then you have the ones that have the big network that are shrinking it down, and eventually they're going to meet in the middle. So we're hearing a lot of noise there as well. Health consumerism, like Adam just mentioned. Guys, price transparency in and of itself, it's a great thing, but it's not enough, especially if people see a high price and assume that that means better quality. It could have the opposite effect. What you need in order to supplement price transparency is quality transparency. Someone needs to know it's not that this is more expensive or cheaper, but rather what's the cheapest price for the best care. And if you were a patient, put yourself in their shoes, and I say to you, you want the best care. Are you talking about who's going to charge the least? Or are you talking about someone who's not in the 40th or 50th percentile for infection there, Adam? And then last but not least, more benefits, broader offerings. This is almost a 180 on the high deductibles and the MEC. This is people realizing that even if Medicare for all were a thing, and it existed, my employees would still want to stay on my plan. What would you do if Medicare for all was real and you got Medicare plus 10% reference-based pricing for half the cost, and you can't compete with that from a pricing perspective? What would you do to make your plan more competitive? Because I tell you what, as a member of the FIA Group's plan, even if Medicare for all existed, I would stay on this plan.
And that's FIA's plan, right? But these are the things, Ron, that we make sure our employees do, right?
That's right.
So this is important. So folks, if these things here that Ron's gonna talk about in a little bit of detail, this is exactly what our plan document looks like
That's
today.
right.
This is our actual FIA plan.
And I would like to say that a lot of this we came up with ourselves, but some of it was crowdsourced by the noise that we were just talking about. When throughout the year or years, we've been talking about all these different things that we've been putting into place to keep the cost down, to get people to feel ownership for the plan.
The biggest thing I think that we found so far is, of all these things here, and then we can move on to the next slide, right, is number one, actually preemptive consultation for medical procedures. Us giving our employee $100 to talk to HR about what their options are had the biggest bang for its buck. We saved tens of thousands of dollars there. And that's second only to diapers and wipes.
Yeah.
With diapers and wipes, how much money do we think we saved already, Ron?
Oh my gosh.
Over 700,000?
Yeah, we actually had one person who, it ended up being a little bit over 300,000. It was a complicated delivery. But if you compared it to the other facilities in the area, it could have been up to 700,000 or 800,000.
So one baby was $700,000 roughly saved. And that's not counting the other 45 people who've already taken up on this.
That one person paid for everybody's diapers and wipes.
Again, there's no reason that everyone should be doing this.
You know what I like about diapers and wipes, and then we're going to move on to the next slide because it's relevant?
Clean?
Oh, gosh, I have them in my car. I use them to clean everything.
The diapers?
Yeah. No, the wipes.
Well, you're in a lot of traffic, huh?
It's super absorbent if you spill traffic, if you spill some coffee. But no, you know what it does also? It's that even if you are someone like Brady, who you're not going to get pregnant, you're not going to have a baby anytime soon, right, Brady? But I know the movie Junior, right? But it still teaches someone like Brady the general concept that you can
having a baby?
No, that you can identify a facility that provides better care for less cost. That message drives home to people who even aren't having babies yet that is a thing.
Right.
And it lets people wrap their hands around it.
The next one, no question, has been the DPC arrangement.
Direct primary.
For us, obviously, Action Medicine has been, Dr. Tremblay and his team has been a huge gateway to assure that when he is referring people for MRIs, other things, that we're keeping that at high quality, low cost facilities. And last but not least, now we're using that physician finder program, which is identifying low cost and the highest quality specialists for whatever type of surgery you may need. Those things, and they're all tied into that preemptive
It's all
discussion with our HR department.
right to the same thing.
Bingo.
Learn, exercise, use the knowledge, use
Learn,
the quality
plan,
knowledge.
save, protect the plan.
Wow. So speaking of another tool you can use to learn about healthcare and save for the plan and protect it, the drugs. It's another major issue. You know, you don't really hear as much about it. It's not just about cost. It's about alternatives. I'll keep saying that again and again. Quality and price, quality and price. And so, again, working with a partner who can look at the medication people are taking and not only identify if there's a less costly option, but if there's an alternative option that would be equally or more effective for equal or less cost, that's important too. So again, doing those audits, making sure people are doing what's best for them, what's most financially wise, but also best from a quality perspective, that is what drives the plan savings and allows us to give it away for no contribution. So let's finish it up. The carrot sticks, right? This again, I'm going to say, when we talk about quality, price transparency, all the things Adam and I have been talking about, it just ultimately comes down to noise. You need to create noise amongst the staff. They need to constantly be reminded that you don't just go and seek out healthcare. You have to shop for healthcare because it's going to impact you. And so, again, the preemptive this consultation with HR, like Adam mentioned, that's our opportunity to remind people about this. Because if you didn't know, you know, you would think, hey, that urgent care is that I don't even know what an urgent care walk-in is. If there's going to be an issue and my doctor's not available, I'm just going to go to the ER. People think that way. So you teach them what an urgent care or a walk-in clinic is. I know it seems like no way somebody doesn't know. Yes, some people don't know. So you educate them about what it is. Same thing about the Shields MRI, right? In New England, they have all the commercials with Tom Brady. Everyone says, man, I love those Shields MRI commercials. But I have no idea what they do there. Teach them what Shields MRI or a self-standing facility is, that the quality is as good or better for less cost, because otherwise people won't take advantage of those opportunities.
If you want, just contact us and we could talk in more detail about all these incentives and what you could do so that you could also offer your employees free health care the way we do next year.
I'm going to blow through the slides so we can get to Jen and talk about some SBD issues, but we've also taught a lot of you guys already about what's happening next year with HRA Integration, and that now you can offer an individual HRA as a way to reimburse your employees who purchase individual coverage on the exchanges. We've talked a lot about it. There's blogs online. One quick update. There's no decision yet on the ACA case. We will let you know if there's one before the end of the year. It might happen. If it does, we'll bring it to you. But for now, SPD updates for next year. Jen?
All right. A couple of things to go through.
We're going to have to talk about this on a podcast as well, because it's definitely number 2.
Yeah.
And we're running out of time. So, Jen?
I'll kind of skip through eligibility. Just make sure that it reads exactly as you want. Your health savings account, if this is something that you're going to be offering, just make sure that it's in line with the current rules, regulations that you already have. And the thing about the benefits that I think should be focused on before we kind of wrap up here is just as a reminder, in the past year, the regulations for preventive care were changed, and they added a couple of benefits to the list that were not ACA-mandated preventive care requirements, but they were for certain chronic conditions like asthma and for diabetes that would allow a plan to consider those to be considered preventive care. And why does that matter? Well, if you have a high deductible health plan and these certain benefits are being classified as preventive care, you don't have to align yourself with the 100% no cost sharing, but you're going to be allowed to pay those benefits first dollar for a high deductible health plan without being penalized. So that's going to be a big impact for those plans that are high deductible, but you have individuals that have those chronic diseases and want to offer that for a certain benefit. Next, let's talk about the SBC changes that we're expecting to see for 2021. So the template's going to change again. How exciting is that? Every year we know that we have to issue a brand new SBC for our employers for our particular plan options, whether we have one option or 4 options, and making sure that we're making those updates to those SBCs, we need to prepare for what we might expect to see for 2021. Some of these changes are going to be specific to modifying how the minimum essential coverage is being summarized. Another change would be how the minimum value would be impacted or addressed within the SBC. Some new instructions we'll expect to see for how the coverage examples are being outlined. And we're getting rid of the references to the individual mandates in the uniform glossary, since that has been taken down to 0 and is effectively no longer a tax, as we've talked about through the course of the year. And with that, I will wrap it up and allow Adam to jump in here.
Jen, she spoke faster than I had ever spoken before. I mean, that was amazing, Jen, what you just did. 5,000 words in 10 seconds.
That's how you know she knows her stuff.
She definitely knows her stuff.
Got to get it in.
That's the last time you're going to hear our voices this year. See us again January 21st, 2020. We're excited about it. We obviously know what you guys want us to talk about, and it's drugs, and more drugs. Speaking of which, Happy New Year. Don't do too many drugs at your New Year's Eve party. Definitely don't do too many drugs in foreign countries. That's what Ron's wanted. Maybe we should do more drugs in foreign countries.
There you go.
Ron slide.
That's costly.
Anyway, on behalf of Jen McCormick, Brady Bizzaro, Ron Peck, our special one-time and one-time only guest, I'm only kidding, Kevin Brady, I am your co-host, Adam Russo. Thank you so much for joining us on the feed group. Happy holidays. Have a great time with your friends and family. Have a good day.